Ah, Italy. Home to pizza, the mob,
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
and of course, Mario, which was actually created by the Japanese. Thank you, Japan! It also looks like a boot. I only realized this a few days ago, which makes me really behind schedule when it comes to references and shit. It's also home to the most prestigious car brand of all time, a car brand that everyone knows. Fiat! Which owns Ferrari, which is the most prestigious car brand on the planet. Joking aside though, this weekend was the Italian Grand Prix, a Grand Prix which should actually be labeled the Grand Prix of Ferrari, because that's what this is. I don't know many people who go there because they just want to see great racing, they want to go see the Tifosi. And yeah, that's what this was. This was a Grand Prix about the Tifosi, and this did not go very well. Anyway, today we're going to do a review of the Italian Grand Prix, so grab your cocoa and frickin' dark latte cappuccino crap and listen to my amazing thoughts of this pretty mediocre race, which is probably the best way to summarize this race, because it was it wasn't that great. I mean, there was some good moments, I won't lie, but there was a lot of predictable stuff in there as well, starting with Mercedes winning again. I'm just saying they've won 2 races in a row, but I don't think that this performance rectifies what the rest of the season's gonna look like. I genuinely believe that actually Ferrari might actually have a competitive edge at Singapore. We're going to one of the best tracks that Sebastian Vettel drives best at, which is the Marina Bay race circuit. And I genuinely think that Sebastian Vettel has a very good shot of winning again at that racetrack. Also, I genuinely think that Kimi drove a very good race as well. He had a better start, there were some things, and it's clear he's being the number 2 this season. But overall, I thought both Ferrari drivers drove well, and I actually really liked Bottas in the Mercedes, but that's just my personal opinion. But overall, it was a good, kind of okay, pretty predictable race up front. But there were some other standouts outside of the top 2 Formula 1 teams, if you exclude also Red Bull in this case. And I actually thought the biggest highlights were Ocon and Stroll. Despite the crazy-ass qualifying, which was just absolutely batshit insane, I genuinely thought Ocon and Stroll really kept their head very level-headed. That didn't make sense at all, but genuinely speaking, I'm not a very big fan of Stroll. I'm a bigger fan of Ocon. I watched him in Formula 3 a couple of times, and I thought he was one of those guys who's destined to do really well in Formula 1. And Stroll, not so much. I mean, this is the guy who was one of the very few people to actually crash at Curva Grande, which is pretty amazing, because it's one of the easiest corners on the planet. But whatever, apparently someone can actually do that. And I wasn't really impressed with most of his season, but overall I have to say he's really stepped up a game, and he's been generally quicker than Felipe most of this season. So I'm actually really happy for him, because he's proving people like me wrong, who are being complete asses and harsh towards him in almost every way. But genuinely speaking, he was great. I actually thought he was one of the drivers of the day. He still has some improvements to make. I think he has to be a bit more aggressive under braking, which Martin Brundle also pointed out. But still, pretty solid overall. Let's talk about Red Bull. Once again, very predictable. They both started from the back, which was a little bit less expected, but the Renault engine wasn't keeping up to date. And the predictable elements were really this. Max doesn't finish a race or is involved in a crash, which puts him a few steps back, and that's really it. With Daniel Ricciardo, he's the one who has to make up all the points. And I'm not going to again shame on Max Verstappen, but he his father made a statement to the press recently that they are fed up with Red Bull providing them a unreliable car, and I said it in my last video, there's a fine line to saying that, because you have to prove that back on track. I don't think it was Felipe Massa's fault. Felipe is not one of those drivers who just pushes and deliberately crashes into other drivers. He's also been very kind towards Max, except for the first season maybe, where he was a bit harsh towards him, I think in Monaco. But even then, I genuinely think that, you know, he's not one of those guys who's just going to brawl it out on track. And so I just thought it was Max's fault, and he has to be a bit more cool-headed. Next week in Singapore, both Red Bull drivers should have actually a pretty good edge over the rest of the field. It's a very high downforce dependent circuit, so I think they'll do a good job actually. but that's my opinion. There were some other predictable elements that happened. Alonso complained a lot. His teammates, Stoffel Van Dorn, actually did a really great job during that race, and I actually thought overall it was a much better weekend. I don't know the situation with McLaren right now. As of Monday, which is when I'm recording this, we still don't know whether or not Honda will will be kicked out of the McLaren factory. But I genuinely think they're probably going to bring Renault, because let's be honest here, this has not been going well, and it's not been working out too well for the rest of the Formula One circus, and it's just a little bit embarrassing, in my opinion. But that's it, you know, there's not really much else to say. I thought it was a race that was pretty mediocre. You know, not really much to talk about, except that hopefully next race will be good. If I have to give it a rating, I'll give it 35 Ferraris over 70, because it's 70 years. Very mediocre. Yay. Enjoyed that, Ferrari fans. I gave it 50% succession rate, or fun rate, whatever we're rating this. Whatever. Doesn't really matter. I'm looking forward to Singapore. It was great to end the season on a mediocre note. And that was really it. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully you enjoyed this review. Please leave a comment. What did you think about the Italian Grand Prix? And what do you think of the season ahead? Who do you think is going to become world champion after this? Meantime, I'll see you later. Take care, folks. Bye for now.